Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are Tampa, Florida Satsang Group. We are happy to celebrate 142nd Jayanthi of Sri Ramana Maharishi with all of you. We have Geetanjali Shiva reading from Be As You Are, Daksha Jadeja reading from Talks 24, Gurleen Gruwal reading 99 and 487 from Talks. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. I'm going to be reading from the book Be As You Are, Chapter Surrender. Question: what is unconditional surrender? Answer: if one surrenders oneself, there will be no one to ask questions or to be thought of. Either the thoughts are eliminated by holding on to the root thought I, or one surrenders oneself unconditionally to the higher power. These are the only two ways for realization. Question: does not total or complete surrender require that one should not have left even the desire for liberation or God? Answer: complete surrender does require that you have no desire of your own. You must be satisfied with whatever God gives you, and that means having no desires of your own. Question: now that I am satisfied on that point, I want to know what the steps are by which I could achieve surrender. Answer: there are two ways. One is looking into the source of I and merging into that source. The other is feeling I am helpless by myself. God alone is all-powerful, and except by throwing myself completely on Him, there is no other means of safety for me. By this method, one gradually develops the conviction that God alone exists and that the ego does not count. Both methods lead to the same goal. Complete surrender is another name for jnana or liberation. Question: I find surrender easier. I want to adopt that path. Answer: by whatever path you go, you will have to lose yourself in the end. Surrender is complete only when you reach the stage, thou art all and thy will be done. The state is not different from jnana. In Soham, that is the affirmation of I am He, there is Dvaita, that is dualism. In surrender, there is Advaita, non-dualism. In the reality, there is neither Dvaita nor Advaita, but that which is. Surrender appears easy because people imagine that once they say with their lips, I surrender, and put their burdens on their Lord, they can be free and do what they like. But the fact is that you can have no likes or dislikes after your surrender. Your will should become completely non-existent and the Lord's will taking its place. The death of the ego in this way brings about a state which is not different from jnana. So, by whatever path you may go, you must come to jnana or oneness. Question: what is the best way of killing the ego? Answer: to each person, that way is the best which appears easiest or appeals most. All the ways are equally good, as they lead to the same goal, which is merging the ego in the self. What the bhakta or devotee calls surrender, the man who does vichara calls jnana. Both are trying only to take the ego back to the source from which it sprang and merge it there. Question: cannot grace hasten such competence in a seeker? Answer: Leave it to God. Surrender unreservedly. One of two things must be done. Either surrender because you admit your inability and require a higher power to help you, or investigate the cause of misery by going to the source and merging into the self. Either way, you'll be free from misery. God never forsakes one who has surrendered. Question: what is the drift of the mind after surrender? Answer: is the surrendered mind raising that question? Question: by constantly desiring to surrender, I hope that increasing grace is experienced. Answer: surrender once for all and be done with the desire. So long as the sense of doership is retained, there is the desire. That is also personality. If this goes, the self is found to shine forth pure. The sense of doership is the bondage and not the actions themselves. Be still and know that I am God. Here, stillness is total surrender without a vestige of individuality. Stillness will prevail and there will be no agitation of mind. Agitation of mind is the cause of desire, the sense of doership and personality. If that is stopped, there is quiet. Their knowing means being. It is not the relative knowledge involving the triads: knowledge, knowing, and known. Question: is the thought I am God or I am the Supreme Being helpful? Answer: I am that I am. I am is God, not thinking I am God. Realize I am and do not think I am. Know I am God, it is said, and not think I am God. All talk of surrender is like pinching brown sugar from a brown sugar image of Lord Ganesha and offering it as Naivedya, which is food offering, to the same Lord Ganesha. You say you offer your body, soul, and all possessions to God. Were they yours that you could offer them? At best, you can only say, I falsely imagined till now that all these which are yours were mine. Now I realize that they are yours. I shall no more act as if they are mine. This knowledge that there is nothing but God or self, that I and mine don't exist, and that only the self exists, is jnana. Thus, there is no difference between bhakti and jnana. Bhakti is jnana mata, or mother of jnana. Question: men of the world that we are, we have some kind of grief or another and do not know how to get over it. We pray to God and still are not satisfied. What can we do? Answer: trust God. Question: we surrender, but still there is no help. Answer: yes. If you have surrendered, you must be able to abide by the will of God and not make a grievance of what may not please you. Things may turn out differently from the way they look apparently. Distress often leads men to faith in God. Question: but we are worldly. There is the wife, there are the children, friends, and relatives. We cannot ignore their existence and resign ourselves to divine will without retaining some little of the personality in us. Answer: that means you have not surrendered as professed by you. You must only trust God. Surrender to Him and abide by His will whether he appears or vanishes. Avoid his pleasure. If you ask him to do as you please, it is not surrender, but command to him. You cannot have him obey you and yet think that you have surrendered. He knows what is best and when and how to do it. Leave everything entirely to him. His is the burden. You have no longer any cares. All your cares are his. Such is surrender. Such is bhakti.
Staying with the experience. Talks 24. Devotee. Thoughts cease suddenly. The I rises as suddenly and continues. It is only in the feeling, not in the intellect. Can it be right? Maharishi. It is certainly right. Feeling is the primary factor. Devotee. When I see outside, it disappears. What is to be done? Maharishi. It must be held tight. What is the ultimate spiritual experience? Is it available now but not known to us? Do spiritual practices give us something new, or do they reveal what already exists? If it is revelatory, does the discovery come only in the end as a sudden flash, or does one have glimpses of the experience all along the way? Does practice only prolong and steady the experience? Is the nature of experience during practice different from the ultimate experience? These questions have all been answered and answered repeatedly by Ramana, yet our weakened minds are unable to grasp it. They are unable to hold on to, unable to grasp the experience, which is of a different dimension. What is this experience? Ramana says it is only the experience of natural happiness. Natural because of its universality. Natural because it is not dependent on any circumstances, any relationships. Therefore, it is non-mental. For the mind functions only through a series of relationships related to the I. Natural also because it is not something which is present sometimes and absent at other times. It is ever one's own and cannot be given or taken away. Ramana also makes it clear that the nature of experience, this experiencing of natural happiness, is not postponed till the very end. If it were so, there would be no spur, no incentive to sustain and nourish spiritual practice. The first flush of enthusiasm would soon wade and fade away. Hence the proposition that the goal of experiencing ultimate happiness and the means to it are the same. Through practice, larger and larger doses of the same experience are had, till at last only the experience is there always and unwaveringly. One is in that state. Many find it hard to believe or accept that the practice and goal are one and the same. But that is the fact which is of considerable significance for spiritual practice. The non-separation of the means and the goal gives a certain immediacy, certain sense of urgency to the practice, for it becomes totally experience-oriented. If you have to have an experience which is not of the mind, quite logically you should learn to put aside the mind, to deal with and negate its obstructive ways. Each one is aware of his own mental state. It is covered with smog, dust, and pollution, like the atmosphere in a big city. The rush of thoughts is like a rush of traffic with two-wheelers, three-wheelers, old cars, modern posh cars, buses, lorries, and all competing to go ahead. Can such a mind, burdened by thought, be silent? A legitimate question, no doubt. It ceases to be so after Ramana has made available his invincible weapon of self-inquiry. The thoughts are no doubt numerous. True, they're pulling us in contrary directions. A constant inner battle is on for claiming the individual's attention. But their numerical strength, their contradictions can be wholly put aside by turning one's attention away from them and thereby nullifying their momentum. The seemingly simple shift in the attention of the mind to its goal, when the seeker becomes the sought, marks the beginning of the end of the mind's sway over us. The mind, thus turned inward, is silent, but then fear grips one, for it is a strange experience, an experience of happiness by seemingly not doing anything, by just remaining alert to the start of thought movement. This doubt and fear abruptly end the joy being experienced. Lack of courage to stay with that experience ends it. The mind reminds us of 1,000 duties on hand, the many jobs to be done, and so on. This voluntary harakiri, this voluntary giving up of the beauty of life, which is experienced when the mind is silent, has long denied one the fruits of one's labor. For staying with that peace is a must. Here one can refer to Ramana's counsel to practitioners. A young man, Krishna Jivrajani, from Karachi asked, "When I reach the thoughtless stage in my sadhana, I enjoy a certain pleasure, but sometimes I also experience a vague fear which I cannot describe." Bhagavan, you may experience anything, but you should not rest content with that. Whether you experience pleasure or fear, ask yourself, who feels this pleasure and fear until pleasure and fear are transcended and reality alone remains? There is nothing unique with such a thing happening or being experienced, but you must never stop with that. When thought is quelled, one must press on until all duality ceases. Here Bhagavan has given his famous antidote to the fear of experiencing the state of non-doing, the state of just being. Question the one who has the fear. Let the fear not cheat you of staying with the experience of natural peace, the exhilaration of true silence. Since it is fear which has given strength to the mind's false alarms, this root fear has to be handled in Ramana's way. One could refer to the conversation which Govind had with Ramana, where again the need to hold on to peace is stressed. I get into meditation and reach a point which may be called peace. What should be the next step? Maharishi, peace need not be disturbed. One should be in that peace only. Govind, but I do not have satisfaction. Maharishi, because your peace is temporary. If made permanent, it is called realization. Time and again, Ramana would bring the seeker back to the need for recognition that positive alertness alone is needed when the mind is turned inward. It may seem like being inactive, but it is not. But one's action orientation allows the mind to resume its sway by entry of thoughts. A conversation with Mrs. Piggott could also be taken to be yet another example of Ramana's emphasis on not letting the experience slip out. Bhagavan, try to realize the body is not you. The emotions are not you. The intellect is not you. When all these are still, you will find, Mrs. Piggott, what? Bhagavan, you will discover. It is not for me to say what the nature of the individual experiences is. Hold on to that. Each one who is serious about practice does experience this beatitude, a peace which envelopes when the mind has become quiet through non-objective meditation, through inwardness. But lack of experience of this spontaneous experience, an experience which is non-mental, leads to its being lost. Such spells must be hung on to, for in the continuity of that happiness lies one's freedom. Om Namo Ramana.
Talk 99 from Talks with Sri Ramana Maharishi. A sannyasi asked, "It is said that the self is beyond the mind, and yet the realization is with the mind. Mano na manute, manasa na matam, and manasaiva tamaptavyam. The mind cannot think it, it cannot be thought of by the mind, and the mind alone can realize it. How are these contradictions to be reconciled?" Maharishi, Atman is realized with mruta manas,
dead mind, i.e., mind devoid of thoughts and turned inward. Then the mind sees its own source and becomes that. It is not as the subject perceiving an object. When the room is dark, a lamp is necessary to illumine and eyes to cognize objects. But when the sun is risen, there is no need of a lamp, and the objects are seen. And to see the sun, no lamp is necessary. It is enough that you turn your eyes towards the self-luminous sun. Similarly, with the mind, to see the objects, the reflected light of the mind is necessary. To see the heart, it is enough that the mind is turned towards it. Then the mind loses itself and the heart shines forth. Talk 487, Afternoon. Disciple: what is the object of self-realization? Maharishi: self-realization is the final goal and it is the end in itself. Disciple: what is the use of self-realization? Maharishi: why should you seek self-realization? Why do you not rest content with your present state? It is evident that you are discontented with the present state. The discontent is at an end if you realize the self. Disciple: what is that self-realization which removes the discontent? I am in the world and there are wars in it. Can self-realization put an end to it? Maharishi: are you in the world, or is the world in you? Disciple: I do not understand. The world is certainly around me. Maharishi: you speak of the world and happenings in it. They are mere ideas in you. The ideas are in the mind. The mind is within you, and so the world is within you. Disciple: I do not follow you. Even if I do not think of the world is still there. Maharishi: do you mean to say that the world is apart from the mind and it can exist in the absence of the mind? Disciple: yes. Maharishi: does the world exist in your deep sleep? Disciple: it does. Maharishi: do you see it in your sleep? Disciple: no, I don't, but others who are awake see it. Maharishi: are you so aware in your sleep? Or do you become aware of the other's knowledge now? Disciple: in my waking state. Maharishi: so you speak of waking knowledge and not of sleep experience. The existence of the world in your waking and dream states is admitted because they are the products of the mind. The mind is withdrawn in sleep, and the world is in the condition of a seed. It becomes manifest over again when you wake up. The ego springs forth, identifies itself with the body, and sees the world. So the world is a mental creation. Disciple: how can it be? Maharishi: do you not create a world in your dream? The waking state also is a long drawn-out dream. There must be a seer behind the waking and dream experiences. Who is that seer? Is it the body? Disciple: it cannot be. Maharishi: is it the mind? Disciple: it must be so. Maharishi: but you remain in the absence of the mind. Disciple: how? Maharishi: in deep sleep. Disciple: I do not know if I am then. Maharishi: if you were not, how do you recollect yesterday's experiences? Is it possible that there was a break in the continuity of the I during sleep? Disciple: it may be. Maharishi: if so, a Johnson may wake up as a Benson, How will the identity of the individual be established? Disciple, I don't know. Maharishi, if this argument is not clear, follow a different line. You admit, I slept well. I feel refreshed after a sound sleep. So sleep was your experience. The experiencer now identifies himself with the I in the speaker. So this I must have been in sleep also. Yes. Maharishi, so I was in sleep. If the world was then there, did it say that it existed? Disciple, no, but the world tells me its existence now. Even if I deny its existence, I may knock myself against a stone and hurt my foot. The injury proves the existence of the stone and so of the world. Maharishi, quite so. The stone hurts the foot. Does the foot say that there is the stone? Disciple, no, I. Maharishi, who is this I? It cannot be the body, nor the mind, as we have seen before. This I is the one who experiences the waking, dream, and sleep states. The three states are changes which do not affect the individual. The experiences are like pictures passing on a screen in the cinema. The appearance and disappearance of the pictures do not affect the screen. So also, the three states alternate with one another, leaving the self unaffected. The waking and the dream states are creations of the mind. So the self covers all. To know that the self remains happy in its perfection is self-realization. Its use lies in the realization of perfection and thus of happiness. Disciple, can it be complete happiness to remain self-realized if one does not contribute to the happiness of the world? How can one be so happy when there is a war in Spain, a war in China? Is it not selfishness to remain self-realized without helping the world? Maharishi, the self was pointed out to you to cover the universe and also transcend it. The world cannot remain apart from the self. If the realization of such self be called selfishness, that selfishness must cover the world also. It is nothing contemptible. Disciple, does not the realized man continue to live just like a non-realized being? Maharishi, yes, with this difference that the realized being does not see the world as being apart from the self. He possesses true knowledge and the internal happiness of being perfect, whereas the other person sees the world apart, feels imperfection, and is miserable. Otherwise, their physical actions are similar. Disciple, the realized being also knows that there are wars being waged in the world just like the other man. Maharishi, yes. Disciple, how then can he be happy? Maharishi, is the cinema screen affected by a scene of fire burning or sea rising? So it is with the self. The idea that I am the body or the mind is so deep that one cannot get over it even if convinced otherwise. One experiences a dream and knows it to be unreal on waking. Waking experience is unreal in other states. So each state contradicts the others. They are therefore mere changes taking place in the seer or phenomena appearing in the self, which is unbroken and remains unaffected by them. Just as the waking, dream, and sleep states are phenomena, so also birth, growth, and death are phenomena in the self, which continues to be unbroken and unaffected. Birth and death are only ideas. They pertain to the body or the mind. The self exists before the birth of this body and will remain after the death of this body. So it is with the series of bodies taken up in succession. The self is immortal. The phenomena are changeful and appear mortal. The fear of death is of the body. It is not true of the self. Such fear is due to ignorance. Realization means true knowledge of the perfection and immortality of the self. Mortality is only an idea and cause of misery. You get rid of it by realizing the immortal nature of the self.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is the end of our program. Now, continuing on with Spanish Satsang group. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.